it is time to open up our Gotta Love Them Movies mailbag. All right, guys, if anybody wants to get an email on the show, if you have a very specific topic that you want to talk about, send me an email at GottaLoveThemMovies@gmail.com. That's GottaLoveThemMovies@gmail.com. And, just send me that email. It's a 24-hour service. I will always get your email. Do you know why? Because it's email. So if there's anything that you want to talk about, if you have a question about something, if something pops up in the news that you are just hearing about and you want to, get an extra set of eyes to check that out, send us an email and we'll make it a main topic on the show. And today's email, we only have one email to cover today in the Gotta Love Them Movies mailbag. And this email comes to us from Henry, who lives right here in New York City. Thank you, Henry. Henry says, "Hey, Mike and guest," and today's guest would be James. So, hey, Mike and James. Well, hey, Henry, how are you doing, sir? And Henry says, "I'm sure you've already seen this, but Jonathan Majors from Lovecraft Country has been cast as Kang the Conqueror in the next Ant-Man movie. Do you think he is the right Kang for the job? And what does this mean for the future of the MCU? Thanks for taking my question." Well, thank you for sending in that question, Henry. And yeah, for anyone that hasn't heard the news already, the star of Lovecraft Country, Jonathan Majors, has just joined the Marvel Cinematic Universe in, this article is coming from Deadline, in a major way. Now, Deadline was the first news outlet to break the story. And let's just kind of scroll down here for a second. They have some really interesting things to say. I'm just gonna do a quick paraphrase of this. Towards the bottom of the very first paragraph, he says, "The studio had no comment on." Let's give a little background here. Majors has been tapped for one of the lead roles in the next Ant-Man movie opposite Paul Rudd and Evangeline Lilly. The studio had no comment, but sources close to the project say he is likely to play the supervillain Kang the Conqueror. For some of you, this is going to come as big news. For other people, you're probably scratching your head wondering, who in the world is Kang the Conqueror? Okay, so we have a few things to cover before, Henry, we can address your email in its entirety. First of all, Kang the Conqueror in Ant-Man 3, what does this mean? Well, first of all, it confirms that there's an Ant-Man 3 movie. Up until this point, we kind of figured that there was going to be an Ant-Man 3 film. The studio had made statements regarding, oh yeah, we're probably going to bring back Peyton Reed and, some of the creative team to write and direct Ant-Man 3, but it wasn't like an official thing. It was just kind of more of like these rumors that we're hearing. We figured it was going to happen, but we didn't have concrete evidence or proof. Jonathan Majors being cast in Ant-Man 3 is kind of proof that there's an Ant-Man 3, first and foremost. So, next off, this doesn't exactly confirm Kang the Conqueror is going to be in the film yet. Is it probably going to happen? Yeah, probably. Deadline is one of those news outlets that is pretty factual. They don't put out a lot of rumor. They don't spread a lot of ideas without them being fact-checked or without there's a pretty good certainty that these rumors are going to turn out to be true. So even though it's probably going to happen, it hasn't actually been confirmed yet. Let's just, keep that with a grain of salt moving forward. So assuming that, Jonathan Majors is playing Kang the Conqueror, what does this mean for the MCU? We're going to cover that in just a minute. But first of all, is Jonathan Majors a good fit to play Kang the Conqueror? Before we can address that question, first we have to find out who is Kang the Conqueror. Kind of a big question. Now, before we get into who Kang the Conqueror is, James, have you heard of Kang the Conqueror? Do you know anything about him?
In the 31st century, went back in time, fought the Avengers, beat the Avengers, and also he's appeared in Fantastic Four as well. And yeah, he wears like a suit, and he's got all these different kind of powers. And yeah, it should be interesting to kind of bring a new character into the MCU that's not appeared before. Because with like, for example, the Avengers and different ones, you get these characters that keep popping back up in the MCU. I think it'd be interesting for a new supervillain.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting because I've just looked at who's going to play him. He's not really done that much stuff.
This is true. Yeah, and we'll get into that in just a second.
His
We'll get into
IMDb
that in
now.
just a second.
Yeah.
But the question is, who is Kang the Conqueror? And James kind of touched on it a little bit. Yeah, he's a time traveler from the 31st century, but I think it's important to note that yes, he's a time traveler from the 31st century. Kang the Conqueror is kind of a super villain in the regard that he kind of gets to hop around time and go where he wants. He is a descendant of Reed Richards, whom, if you are not familiar with the name Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic from the Fantastic Four. Kang the Conqueror in the comics came to understand and learn about time travel through the work that Victor Von Doom, also a Fantastic Four villain, had done previously in the comics. So Kang the Conqueror is one of those guys that goes through time, and his whole thing is that he is looking to be worshipped as a god in every single time period. He wants to go back to ancient Pharaoh Egypt, and he wants to be worshipped as a god. He wants to go to the far, far future and be worshipped as a god. He wants to be the number, like, you talk about super ego, you talk about someone who is a complete narcissist. This is Kang the Conqueror. He wants to be the ultimate superior, all-time number one, not just in the time that he lives, but forever. He wants his name to be synonymous, not just with Thanos. He wants his name to be synonymous, with the biggest gods and deities that have ever lived. And he wants to be the biggest and baddest of them all. And what's interesting, a few points very interesting about Kang the Conqueror is that he is traditionally, I say traditionally, but more in the here and now, Kang the Conqueror in recent history has been very closely associated with the Young Avengers. Now, okay, I got a few things to say about that. So with the Young Avengers, James, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but the Young Avengers are a. Well, first of all, are you even familiar with the Young Avengers?
To be honest with you, I'm kind of. I've always been. Don't get me wrong, a fan of Spider-Man.
No. Like just a yes or no question. Like Young Avengers, are you familiar or not?
No.
Not really. Cool. Awesome.
I can find out.
No. Like this is no. So the Young Avengers are a group. It's a superhero group, team group up, whatever. They are all derivatives of like some of the major Avengers, right? So we have Iron Lad, who is kind of a derivative of Iron Man. We have Patriot, who is kind of a derivative of Captain America. We have Cassie Lang, who has already appeared in the MCU as Scott Lang's daughter. She grows up to become Stature. She kind of takes on the mantle of like the Iron Man, she takes on the mantle of the Ant-Man costume and usually gets like really, really big as opposed to Ant-Man getting really, really small. So she takes on the mantle of Stature. We have Kate Bishop, who is the daughter of Hawkeye, who takes on the mantle of Hawkeye with the bow and arrow. We have this group of superhuman people. And in the films, in the MCU itself, they have already started laying the groundwork, in my opinion, and also many other people's opinion. This is, like I say, this is pure speculation here. Pure speculation. But it is my opinion that being that Kang the Conqueror in the comics has shown up most predominantly in the Young Avengers comics, and very famously has been a super villain of, or I guess like nemesis of the Young Avengers. That he is going to his appearance in Ant-Man 3 is eventually going to lead up to a Young Avengers film. Now, in Iron Man 3, we already know that there was the small mechanic kid who was very enamored with Iron Man. And we saw him again at Tony Stark's funeral. We already have Tony Stark's daughter. Maybe she'll be in the Young Avengers, maybe we won't. We already have, I don't know if she's going to go by the name Kate Bishop, but we have Hawkeye's daughter in the MCU proper, and there's also going to be a spin-off television show called Hawkeye, where Hawkeye teaches his daughter how to be Hawkeye. We already know this. We have Cassie Lang in the MCU. We have all these people. The groundwork has already started to be laid. And, with time travel being introduced in Endgame, everybody was starting to clamor, oh, Kang the Conqueror is near. Kang the Conqueror is near. They have to introduce Kang the Conqueror in Avengers Endgame. They didn't. But now that we have time travel that can be used in... through the quantum realm, which quantum realm is, associated with Ant-Man 3, it is my opinion that they are building up to, again, like an Avengers-level cataclysmic event of the Young Avengers, starring Kang the Conqueror. I think this is incredibly exciting. James, does this get you excited? Is this something that is like, how do you think this is going to change the MCU if this is true?
Yeah. Well, to touch on Young Avengers, is it?
What's the question?
Was it Young Avengers? Was it the Young Avengers? Young Avengers?
That is a super team, yes.
Yeah. Now, it could go both ways. It could go, for example, with the I Love X-Men done a New Mutants film, and it absolutely bombed over here to the point where nobody watched it. Now, maybe that's to do with potentially COVID. Who knows? And nobody went to the cinema. Over here, nobody went to watch it. Or it could go the other way, and it could be fresh. Because you got to remember the Avengers have had how many films now? They've had Age of Ultron.
Well, there's
Civil War.
There's 4 Avengers films officially, but if you're talking about the MCU all encompassing, there's 23 films. 23 films in the MCU.
Now, is it time to get new faces into the MCU? New heroes, a band of heroes, like you're talking about, Iron Lad, Patriot. Is it time to get these new people into the MCU and start kind of, not afresh as a sense, but...
Yeah. Well, I mean, they already are doing that. They have the Shang-Chi movie coming out. We have the Eternals movie coming out. We have Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. They have already introduced, they've announced that on Disney Plus we're going to get, aside from a Loki show, aside from Falcon and Winter Soldier, aside from the WandaVision show, we're also getting She-Hulk. We're getting Moon Knight, and we're getting, what was the other one? Ms. Marvel. So we're getting a Ms. Marvel, we're getting a She-Hulk, we're getting a Moon Knight introduced into the MCU proper through Disney Plus, through this television show. Not to mention all the other small minor characters that they may seed into these stories. I think this is incredibly exciting. I think this could be bigger than Thanos. This has the potential to be bigger and badder than Thanos because, here we have a supervillain who he doesn't have any superpowers per se. I mean, they may retcon that. They may change things a little bit in the movies, but he doesn't have any superpowers per se. Except for his manipulation of time travel. Now it's like it's through the device created by, or rather the method or technique developed by Victor Von Doom. Are they going to go the Victor Von Doom route in the movies? Probably not. They're probably going to stick with the quantum realm, passing through time in that regard for the films. But also something I heard somebody else mention this on YouTube yesterday, actually, as a matter of fact. There is a possibility, being that Kang the Conqueror has such a strong origin story with the ancient pharaohs, and I can't remember his Egyptian name in the comics, but for a while, Kang the Conqueror was going by an alternate name, and he was kind of a precursor to Apocalypse. And if you're familiar with Apocalypse, he is like a major cataclysmic villain in the X-Men universe. People have often asked, how are they going to introduce mutants into the MCU? I mean, it's possible. It's possible they could introduce mutants through Kang the Conqueror. Maybe he's not just a time traveler. Maybe he's a dimension hopper. Maybe he's going to bring Apocalypse from one dimension into our, universe, and using the multiverse, because why not? They have already introduced it. They've already talked about it. It's possible. There are so many possibilities here with Kang the Conqueror. And Henry, if I can just go back to your question for a second, you asked. So I think we've hit all the different points here. But the one question that you asked that we haven't addressed yet is, do you think he, meaning Jonathan Majors, is the right Kang for the job? James, are you familiar with Jonathan Majors' previous work? He did Lovecraft Country. He was in Da 5 Bloods, a Spike Lee joint, just came out on Netflix. He was in The Last Black Man in San Francisco. He's done a few other projects and whatnot. White Boy Rick, I think he was in White Boy Rick. James, are you familiar with his work? Have you seen Lovecraft Country? What do you think? Could this be a good fit for Kang?
That's what I was going to touch upon. To be honest, I'm looking at his IMDb now, and I'm not going to lie, I've not seen any single thing. Or he's only got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, probably about 13 credits since in the last 9 years. So I wouldn't say he's a veteran actor. Yeah, it'd be interesting to watch him. It'd be interesting to watch some of his stuff and see, how he. Because like I say, with acting myself, it's took me a long time to kind of find my roots. The way, the direction I like to go. With practicing all these different kind of things with stand-up comedy, improv, different things I've performed on film, TV, and all these kind of. It'd be interesting to watch him, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I think you hit the head on the nail. It will be interesting to watch him and see how this progresses. I for one, I've been very vocal in the fact of I didn't care for Lovecraft Country. A lot of that has to do with character development. Actually, most of that has to do with character development. It's a kind of show that is right up my alley. I really love like that fantasy horror stuff. I think that could be a really cool genre. This story, I feel like in Lovecraft Country, I feel like we were promised steak, and all we got was like ramen noodles, like with small little steaky bits put into the ramen. I feel like they didn't quite deliver on the promise of what Lovecraft Country was, or at least what I was expecting. Maybe everyone else out there was expecting something completely different with Lovecraft Country than what I was expecting. I would actually be very interested. Jump down to the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. But with Jonathan Majors, he doesn't strike me as a charismatic actor. He seems a little flat. He seems a little stale, which goes back to the question, Henry, that you asked, is Jonathan Majors going to be the right Kang for the job? That all depends on how they write the character of Kang. Kang in the comics and Kang on screen could be two very different incarnations. Scott Lang in the comics and Scott Lang on the screen a little different, a little different. Same thing with Thanos, same thing, even Captain America, even Iron Man. They all have a little bit of a different flavor. A lot of that is the actor, but it's also the writing. How is this character supposed to act? Dave Bautista is a great example of this. Dave Bautista is not a great actor. He's getting better. He is definitely getting better. But he needs a little work. His performance as Drax is brilliant because James Gunn understands this is my actor. This is who I want the character to be. So let's cast the actor as close to the character as possible so they don't have to go outside the range of creating a whole new character in this regard. So if they write the character of Kang the Conqueror to be that kind of like dry, flat, not quite as charismatic individual that I perceive Jonathan Majors to be, this could be an incredible fit. But if they want him to be a little bit more gregarious, I just don't see it. James, do you have any additional thoughts on the matter and how, because I understand you're not incredibly familiar with the work of Jonathan Majors, but based on my brief description, I don't think he's a charismatic actor. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a bad portrayal of the character of Kang. Do you have any insight into this particular issue, and do you think that they are going to write for his strengths?
Yeah, because that's the thing I wanted to kind of touch on. Like you say, with Dave Bautista, not a great actor, but with Drax, they've kind of. Sorry. They kind of he's found the thing that fits him. Like for example, with Arnold Schwarzenegger, could you see anybody else doing the Terminator?
Oh no, definitely not. Definitely not.
Could you see anybody else doing Rocky?
Again, no.
Luckily, no, exactly. Luckily for Dave Bautista, he's found his thing. He was in which Bond film was it?
Spectre. Unfortunately, it was
Spectre.
Spectre. It was a terrible film.
Yeah, Spectre. I think it's a memorable performance by Dave Bautista. Could they have got anybody else to be the big muscle? Of course they could.
That's a great point.
Will it be interesting to kind of see this gentleman play Kang? Yeah, of course. But like you say, I think they have to write it to his strengths, because if they start kind of writing it above what he could perform, it's just going to be. You can think of a lot of actors where it's not memory.
Yeah, it's true.
And I suppose that goes towards, like, for example, with The Rock sideline, but the Rock, I enjoyed him as a wrestler. I enjoy watching him in films, but he's not made a film that's going to be going down memorable. That's going to be a classic. Like, for example, Arnold, he brought out Running Man, Predator, Terminator, and it's, even though The Rock's got charisma...
You don't think that Skyscraper is going to be a classic film?
Oh, yeah, of course it is. It's going to be in the top Empire Top 100, of course. No, it's not. But yeah, with The Rock, his charisma. Jean-Claude is charisma. Arnold Schwarzenegger, charisma. I'm hoping, and I'm gonna check out a couple of these things by Jonathan Majors. And normally I'm right. Normally I'll see an, like, for example, Tom Hardy and Venom. They could have easily got somebody else.
Yeah.
As Bane. I know that everybody loves Tom Hardy as Bane, but for me, They could have got somebody else to wear that mask and be muscular.
It wasn't to the same level of, like, say, Heath Ledger's Joker. It wasn't to that level. Like, it was cool. Yeah, it was kind of cool. But also, it wasn't like this, like, incredibly iconic. There's nobody else that could play Bane. Yeah, I totally get your point. Yeah, I totally see that.
Yeah.
Anyway, question is, guys, what do you think about the casting of Jonathan Majors? Does this do it for you? Do you think he's going to crush it? Do you think this is going to be the coolest thing ever? If indeed, you know, he is going to play Kang the Conqueror. Jump down to the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. Thoughts? Let me know your thoughts. Thoughts. Yeah. I don't know. Again, like I said, English. Speaking words, not my strong suit. But yeah, also, is there anything about the MCU or the Young Avengers? Do you think that introducing Kang the Conqueror is going to take the MCU in a very different direction? Do you think Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is going to play into Kang the Conqueror entering at all? Do you think they're announcing that Kang the Conqueror is going to be in Ant-Man 3, kind of the villain or the big bad of Ant-Man 3. But do you think they're actually going to seed him in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness? I don't know. It could be. Who knows? Jump down to the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. Okay, guys. So